Okay. Hello. Can everybody hear me? Okay. Am I too loud? Okay. Not yet. That was my mom that said that. She knows me too well. All right. I feel like I was eating that thing. Okay. Well, thanks everybody for staying and being here. It really is an honor to be able to be here. And those of you who are watching online, I know that that there are those that are going to watch this later too. And I am blessed to have you join me as well. So would you please bow your head and pray with me? Heavenly Father, I am so beyond grateful for this opportunity. I'm beyond grateful that you gave me the opportunity to take this journey, and now that you're allowing me to share the journey that you took me on with others. I pray, Lord, that you will help me to comfort the afflicted and to afflict those who are comfortable. It is in your name that we pray. Amen. So I wanted to start out, and I wanted to do a brief overview of Micah 6:8. I know that Michelle, Marcy, Val, and Rachel told you guys about that. Some of you got to hear about their trip in October, but I wanted to go over that again with you for those who are new and maybe haven't heard it, and also just to remind you of those things. So if you want to go ahead and pull up the, actually it's the other, let me think. No, it's the other presentation, not that one. It's the other presentation that needs to go first. So when you guys think about Africa, what are some things that you guys think of whenever you think of Africa? Far away. What else? I mean, like in Africa, what do you think of? Heat. Okay, maybe animals like elephants and things like that, or tribal people dancing, maybe, something like that. Go ahead to the next slide. So there's some pictures of things you might think of, the elephants or the tribal people. That bottom picture is a picture of the lady in the purple kind of in the middle is my friend Christy Farhar, and she is the founder of Micah 6:8. So for those of you who think that you have to be from somewhere other than here or be somebody different than who you are to start an organization in Africa, let me just tell you that you're wrong. Christy Farhar is from Shoals, Indiana. She traveled to Ghana in 2011, I believe, and was so afflicted by what she saw that she knew she had to do something. And so she came home and she started the Micah 6:8 project. And they have done mighty, mighty things since then. Go ahead to the next slide. So there are, in Africa, so I'm going to tell you some things about Africa that some of you probably know, but some of you might not. So in Africa, and in Ghana especially, there are over 7,000 children who are enslaved today, and they are working on Lake Volta. So Lake Volta is the largest man-made lake in the world, and kids as young as 3. So I want you to think about the kids that were up here this morning, Everett Dellinger. Think about those children. Those children like them, are enslaved on a lake in Ghana, working at night in the dark on a boat, fishing. And they are often forced into the water to untangle nets, to do things that are unfathomable. So there's a picture of some of these boys on the lake. There's another picture of a little boy. They're working. They're not just out on a boat ride, they're actually working. And they're working throwing nets. They work 14 to 6 hour days, mainly at night, fishing, bailing water out of the boats, diving under if the nets get tangled, diving into the water. They are 3. How many of you knew how to swim when you were 3? Exactly. So because Lake Volta is a man-made lake, what happened was that they flooded the land to create hydroelectric power, which was meant to be a good thing for the socioeconomics of the country. But because they did that, when they flooded it, they flooded areas that had trees. And so, as you can see in this picture, as you can see in this picture, there are trees that when they throw the nets out, they get tangled into the nets and the children have to go down it. And because the nets are so little, they need little fingers to help untangle them. And so that's a lot of the reason why they use small children. Go ahead to the next slide. So Christy asked herself, she said, what can we do to help? What can I do to help? Next slide. So the first thing she did, she realized that part of the problem was that parents didn't have a vocation. They didn't know how to do anything. They'd never been taught how to do anything. And so they started vocational training centers where mainly women, but both men and women, they teach them how to sew. They are sponsored and by someone. Typically, somebody in America sponsors them, and whenever they're done with their class, it's a year-long class that they take. When they're done with that, they are gifted with a sewing machine so that they can start sewing right away and make money for their families, so that they don't have to sell their children, because that's what they're doing in order to feed the others or in order to feed themselves. So Micah 6:8 has graduated to date 7 classes since 2014. And as I said, they are given a sewing machine so they can start their own business immediately. But they didn't stop there. So once these women and fathers and mothers no longer had to sell their children, guess what? Their children were at home, and they needed an education. And so the Micah 6:8 built the Micah 6:8 Academy, which is shown here in this picture. And so they also have sponsorships for these children, so that people like you and I sponsor these children so they can go to school, so they get fed maybe the only meal that they get that day. They get vitamins and things that they need to have a healthy life. And it keeps them out. So I love this picture. This is one of my favorite pictures. They quickly enrolled over 300 kids. So if you think that your dollars don't have an impact, think about this picture and think about each one of these children would have likely been working as slaves on the boat in the lake if they had not been for this. So Micah 6:8 then experienced a tragedy amongst itself. Some of you know Sam and Patty Williams, who attend church here. Their daughter-in-law is a longtime member of the Micah 6:8 board and has been to Ghana several times. Her son Jacob, which would be Sam and Patty Williams' grandson, he passed away tragically in a drowning accident in June of 2017. But in order to honor his life, honor his memory, they chose to start a non-for-profit arm of Micah 6:8 called Jacob's Wells, which provides well water. They build wells for children. So I love this picture here, the one over here of the little boys. Imagine always drinking dirty water, and for the first time ever, getting to play and getting to drink water without dirt in it. We don't even think about that. So we continue from there. So Ghana is a primarily Muslim community, and so Micah 6:8's main objective is to show the love of Christ to those in that community. So since 2020, in 2020, during a pandemic, when most everything else stopped, Micah 6:8 built a junior high school for those students who needed to continue their education, who have gone through the primary school, so gone through 1st through 5th grades, needed to go on. The junior high, they built a medical clinic, which is primarily what I will talk to you about here in a little bit. And then they are in the process of building a guest house to generate income and a house for guests, like our teams whenever we went there. And then a very exciting thing as well is in the village of Kunkunde, which I actually got to visit, and I will talk about a little bit more in a few minutes. They are hoping to build a school. It is what Christy calls the poorest village she's ever been to, which is saying a lot because there's a lot of poor places. They talk about there's the poor, and then there's the really poor. We would just classify them all as poor, but they know the difference. So in the beginning, there was a picture of these 2 boys. I don't know if you caught it or not. I actually know one of these boys, and he's going to be my first story that I'm going to tell you about. Go back for a minute, if you don't mind. So these 2 boys are named Jacob and Christian. And Christian went on my trip with me. So his story is that when Christian was 5 years old, his mother, I'm not sure if she sold him or she gave him, I'm not sure the circumstances, but she released him to a slave master to work on Lake Volta. And he actually went to live with Jacob's father, who was the slave master. So Jacob also worked as a slave for his own father. At least that's how it's explained to me. And they worked on Lake Volta for 5 years. So from age 5 to age 10, Jacob and Christian worked on Lake Volta. And you know, a story changes your life whenever it's somebody that you know, when it's somebody that you meet, and you know it's real. You know, you watch these commercials on TV, and you're like, yeah, okay, that's sad, but are they just, you know, is that real? Christian's real. I've held his hand. I've hugged him. He is my friend. So at age 10, an organization called Touch of Life came in, and they rescued these two boys. And part of their story is that Jacob, when he was working for his father on the boat, at one point in time, he came up out of the water and wanted to get back in the boat, and his father hit him on the head with the oar to force him back down in the water. And when that happened, he heard a pop, and he never was able to hear again. So he lost his hearing. And so I think, though, that part of the reason that Christian and Jacob stayed together at that point, though, is because I think Christian became somewhat of a communicator for Jacob, which is kind of a neat thing in a way, because if that hadn't happened, I don't know if Christian would have also been rescued, or if they just would have rescued Jacob because of his hearing loss. Either way, the two boys were rescued at age 10 and taken to a place in Ghana called Touch of Life, and they stayed there. They lived there for 2 years. And I got to visit that place when I was there as well, and it is a beautiful place. It's very secluded, but they have a beautiful art center there that the children get to learn in, and they feed them. They have homes for them. They have places for them to play and be children, and it's really a beautiful thing. If you want to go to the next slide. And this is Christian today. This is my friend Christy, who's the founder of Micah 6:8. To see the difference between that picture that you just saw and to see him today, he is a beautiful soul. And God has a wonderful plan for him. And I pray every day that he will lean into that plan and just let God bloom him so beautifully. And he really already has. So that's the background. That's the Micah 6:8 story. I'll pause for a minute and ask, is there any questions? I'm going to now show you slides of my actual trip so that you can see my story. But I want to make sure I didn't forget anything about Micah 6:8 specifically. Is there any questions, comments, anything that I've maybe overlooked that you guys feel I need to say? Yeah. The question is, do they pay the mothers to take their children? It's my understanding that sometimes they do, but I also will tell you that a lot of times these parents are so desperate that if someone comes to them and says, we will take your child and we will feed them, they are willing to let them go with the hope that that person isn't lying to them. With the hope that that person will in fact feed them and that they won't die. Because the alternative is that if they stay, they probably will die because they don't have the means to take care of them. The parents don't have the means to take care of them. So they figure anything is better than nothing. So I don't know the circumstances always about that. I understand that sometimes they do give money to the parents, but not always. Anything else before I move on? That was a good question. Thank you. Okay. So I told you guys about the medical clinic that I actually got called to work. And so here's a quick story. I hadn't planned on telling this part of the story, but when the girls went in October, I desperately wanted to go with them. And I prayed about it, and God said no. And I was devastated because I had been praying about going to Africa for a long time. Since I met Christy, I knew that I wanted to go and be a part of this. And I just didn't understand why God wouldn't let me. go with my best friends on this trip. But God said no. And then, so I was obedient to that, and I prayed for them desperately on their journey, and that there was such blessing in that. But shortly after they returned home, God revealed to me that he had a greater plan for me. He had a job that he needed me to do. And that job was that he wanted me to go and help set up this medical clinic. So I work at Good Samaritan Hospital. I've worked in the medical field, but I am not clinical. So whenever Christy called me and asked me if I wanted to be on the medical board for the Micah 6:8 project, my first question to her was, I'm not a nurse, right? And she said, no, but God has laid you on my heart. I just feel like you're supposed to be a part of this. And he sure did. He sure had a plan. So his plan for me was that I was to go and I work with computers all day. I work on Excel spreadsheets and put together inventory lists and all kinds of things, and that's exactly what God had for me to do. And so God said no to me for going with my best friends to Africa because he had another job for me to do. And it was, in a lot of ways, it was a greater blessing that I was obedient to him and waited to go whenever he needed me to go. So I just want to make sure you guys understand where Ghana is. So this is a picture of Ghana. Ghana is about the size of, it's just a little bit smaller than Indiana and Illinois combined. So that gives you a good idea of how big it is. And it's a country in West Africa. If you go to the next slide. So from my house, we traveled over 6,000 miles to get there. So from Wheatland, Indiana to Yeji's over 6,000 miles. That is a picture of Accra, which is the capital city of Ghana. Accra has a population of nearly 2.6 million people. The plane ride from New York to the capital city of Accra, anybody have any ideas other than those of you who've been? Any ideas how long the plane ride is? It's a little over 10 hours. We were in a plane for a little over 10 hours, but it was at night, so we slept and it was good. Well, we kind of slept. Actually, no, I will give praise to this. I had my prayer warriors here on the ground praying for me, and I slept. Praise the Lord, I slept. And God multiplied that sleep too. So I remember, and even coming home, I remember waking up and being like, it's almost time to land. Wow. So thank you to my prayer warriors for that. So then this is a picture. So we landed down there on the coast is Accra, down at the bottom of the picture. We then traveled up to Kumasi and then over and up to Yeji. The very top of this picture is where Yeji is located. And believe it or not, it's 300 miles. It took us a day and a half to travel there. The roads in Ghana are rough. Somebody said they kind of remind them of the coal mine roads here in Knox County, and that's a pretty good analogy if any of you have ever driven on coal mine roads, and that's like, that's kind of what it's like there most of the time. You guys saw this picture earlier if you were here in the service. This is a picture of our team. There's 11 of us on the team, and I want to point out the young lady over here on the edge of the picture. Her name is Patty. She is 89 years old. She has been to Ghana with Micah 6:8 7 times. So for any of you who say that your age alone is the reason you could never do something like this, no. In Jesus' name, I say no to that. Now, there may be other reasons why you can't go, but that's not it. So, yes, Patty. So there was 11 of us. Yeah, go ahead and go on to the next slide. And we were met there by Kwame, who is the in-country director for Micah 6:8. He's the boots on the ground in Ghana for Micah 6:8, and I don't know how that man does all that he does. He is an amazing man that does so many things. It blows my mind. The other man on the other side in the white, his name is Robert, and Robert was our driver for the week. And he is a gentle giant. And he drove us around in this bus all the time that we were there. So this is what we traveled in. If you'll notice on there, it says the Electricity Company of Ghana. This is actually a government-owned vehicle. The government owns the electric company in Ghana. And Micah 6:8 rents this bus from the electric company because it's government-owned. We don't get stopped by the police, which sounds like we're trying to do something bad, but the police in Ghana are actually corrupt in a lot of ways, and so they will often stop people to get money from them, just to let them pass the road, to keep going on the road. And so if you're in a government vehicle, they don't do that. Although we did get stopped one time, to which Robert was very indignant about, and threatened to call his boss. But he did end up paying them I don't know if it was $10 or 10 CDs, which is their money. But anyway, he paid them a little bit. So one of the biggest surprises for me, one of the things that I hadn't really seen of the pictures of people that had gone already before me, I had never really seen, were the streets and how things are just sold right on the edges of the streets, literally everywhere. The streets just look like this everywhere. And then the things that are sold on those streets. If you look closely, these are fish. These are sun-dried fish that were sitting out on the side of the sidewalk in the sun with the flies and all the things. And this was one of the things that you could purchase in the market. Anybody want to have that for lunch? Nobody? Oh, man. Although I will say I did have octopus from the side of the road, and it was very good, but it was not sun-dried. In the bigger cities, you can also buy things like your bed frames from the side of the road, as shown in this picture. Or in the next picture, you will see that you can buy a refrigerator, a big screen TV, a stove, all on the side of the road underneath of umbrellas. That was in Accra that we saw those pictures. Most common of all, and probably one of the most fun things for me to see, although I wondered about their compression of their spine, but anyway, women often carry lots of things on their heads, and they walk up and down the middle of the streets, and all you have to do is roll down your window and hold money out, and they'll come up to your window and give you whatever it is that they have. So whether it be a bottle of water, a loaf of bread, whatever. And I joked that I think you could purchase an entire meal on your way home from work, just from these women that are walking on the streets. But they do, and often they would have a baby wrapped on them, on their backs, and then have this on their heads. So this picture's a little blurry, and I'll just describe it for you if you can't really tell what it is. It's two men laying on the ground. So in Yeji is very hot. The heat index there while I was there was about 105. And so these men found the only shade that they could find, go ahead to the next picture, under their truck. So I just thought that was a neat picture because can you imagine being like, I think I'm going to lay underneath of this truck. That just doesn't seem like a very good idea to me. I hope the air holds out on those tires. So Ghana does have some beautiful scenery. On the way up to Yeji, we stopped and got this picture here of some of the landscape. And then as we were traveling, this picture as well. But if you could see this picture closer, which if you go to the next slide, I've zoomed in on it. Trash. Trash is everywhere. So they try to reuse as much as they can, and they try to burn what they can, but everything else just goes on the ground wherever they are when they don't need it anymore. So there's a lot of trash everywhere. And so probably between the roads and the trash infrastructure, those are the two things that I always knew were good here, but those are two things that I just really broke my heart about that place, because you would, even on the beach, when we went, we had the opportunity to go to the coast. Even there's just trash, and so these beautiful places have trash. So this picture here is of the place where we stayed. I just thought you guys might enjoy seeing what a place looks like where people stay when they're there. This is called the Jofel Guest House, and the next picture is of the room that my friend Heidi and I shared, which looks pretty simple. It was, but there actually it has its own bathroom with running water, and when the power worked, we had air conditioning. So, and we were fortunate enough that we only had one night where the power didn't work, and thankfully the place where we stayed did have a generator, so we had a ceiling fan. Although when it's 95 degrees, it was still pretty hard to sleep, but praise God, we were able to get some sleep that night. So this is what the houses in Yeji look like. I often get questions about that, so I thought I would show that to you guys. Often made of mud brick right there on location, and then they have either straw or metal roof. And this is what the streets of Yeji look like. That's Lake Volta in the background there. And another surprising thing is that animals just roam around wherever they want, anywhere they want. In fact, if you go to the next slide, this is a picture of the courtyard at the hospital in Kumasi, which is where we had to go to get our COVID test in order to get back into the United States. And while we were there, this guy was walking around in the courtyard of the hospital, and nobody seemed to think a thing of it. Oh, there's just a chicken walking around in the hospital. So anytime you guys complain about there being toilet paper on the floor in the bathroom at Good Samaritan, just think about, well, at least there's not a chicken in the bathroom of the hospital. This is a picture of the overflow waiting area at the hospital. So again, we complain when we have to wait 20 minutes, maybe an hour. These people waited, who knows how long. And they're outside because the inside is already so full. And a lot of times people, go back to that picture for a minute, Greg, if you don't mind. A lot of times people, people who have money, they can afford to take, it's no different than it is here really. I mean, people who have money can afford to take the day off from work and go and sit and wait. But people who can't, that makes it even that much harder, because if they're not working, they're not making any money, right? And so the next slide shows that Micah 6:8 started taking medical missions, and that picture at the bottom is our sweet Miss Marcy when she was there on her first trip in March of 2020, right? Yes, February 2020, just before the pandemic hit. And go back to that picture for just a minute, Greg. So they started sending medical teams to Yeji so that to help provide medical care for the people in Yeji, but only for about a week at a time. Those they would go from the United States over there, do a clinic for a week, and then come home. And one story that Christy shared with me just the other day, so powerful. There's a woman there. There was a woman, and there's a million stories that go similar to this one, but this particular woman was crippled, and no one would care for her because they thought she had evil spirits in her. And she literally, when she found out that, at one point, when she found out that there was a medical team at Micah 6:8 location there in Yeji, she literally drug herself to where they were to seek medical care. And when I think about that, and knowing Micah 6:8, where the buildings are away from town. They're not like it's. This would have been a long way for her to, even if she was in town, like it would have been at least probably a couple of miles that she would have had to drug herself to get this medical care. So they would see things like that, and they knew that they had to do something more long term, which is why they built the medical clinic. So this is the new building. This side that I took a picture of, that's my friend Heidi in the picture. This is the junior high that they just completed, and on the other side of that is the medical clinic. If you go to the next picture, this is the inside of the main corridor of the medical clinic. It's beautiful, especially in comparison to the mud huts that you see. It's beautiful. This is the check-in area where they will come in, and then the waiting area there. This is an exam room that we set up, one of the exam rooms that we set up while we were there. And then, if you guys were here for the service, you saw this picture. This is a picture of me. That's my fancy desk made out of 2 buckets of paint and a green tote that I made, that we kind of propped together to make me a desk, so that I could stand in the storeroom while we unpacked all the totes. And as we unpacked totes, I created a list of all the things that we had brought from there. And like I said during the service, because of generous donations from you guys, I was able to take there were generous donations from others throughout the world as well, so I don't want to lose sight of that, but from the generous donations of you guys alone, we were able to take right at $1,000 worth of equipment and supplies and things that aren't able to be purchased there. So thank you for that. And it was such a blessing to get to see that cabinet get filled up. As a matter of fact, we had more than what that cabinet would hold, so we're going to have to get some more shelving and things like that. Go ahead. Yes, and the medical clinic has flushing toilets. Now, that may not seem like a big deal to you guys, but let me tell you, that's a big deal in Yeji. A lot of times, if you find somewhere where there's a toilet, you have to fill up a bucket and use it to flush it, right? And oftentimes you have to pay money to use that toilet. Well, these are actually flushing toilets that have plumbing and everything running. If you go to the next picture, this is a picture that you will often see in public bathrooms because people in Africa don't actually know how to use a toilet very often. And so they have to put those pictures up because they have found that people think that you're supposed to squat on top of the toilet instead of sitting on the toilet. And then they don't know what to do with the toilet paper because, as disgusting as it sounds, they don't know how to use toilet paper. Yes, just let that soak in for a little bit. So the clinic has toilets, and it also will have air conditioning, which is exciting as well. This is a picture of the medical records in Kumasi, in the hospital in Kumasi. I don't know if you guys know much about medical records, but you guys probably all know that we have to be very careful in the United States not to share any private medical information with anybody else, right? Everybody knows that, right? Well, and you work in medical records, right? So can you imagine this was in the waiting area of the hospital next to where we were getting COVID tested, and I could read names, I could read diagnoses, I could read all their problems right there in the main waiting area. And it looks pretty organized too, right? Not at all. As a matter of fact, my team asked if I wanted to stay and help organize that, and even for me, that didn't even sound like anything I would want to do. So I show you that picture to show you that if you go to the next slide, Micah 6:8 has been blessed to join forces with a company called Backpack EMR. We have electronic medical records. We will have computers in the clinic that we will be able to electronically keep track of all the things that we do, all the things that are done in the clinic, especially the heights and the weights and all of that of our students, so we can see that they're progressing nicely. And then we will be able to see that here in the United States. So I will be able to trend data and do all kinds of fun things that I like to do because I'm a geek like that and like to do those kinds of things. But it will help us to make sure that these people are as healthy as they possibly can be. We will also be able to stream, in the next phase, they're going to have the ability to stream live footage. So if our nurse in Yeji has a question for somebody here in America about a particular issue of a patient, they'll be able to share video feed back and forth with one another and get some consultation about that as well, which is pretty exciting too. So this picture is a picture of one of the students at the Micah 6:8 Academy. Her name is Alea. And do you notice anything about Alea that looks a little different? Her legs. Does anybody have any idea what's wrong with her legs? The nurse over here knew it. She has rickets. So rickets is a vitamin D deficiency. What are some foods you guys think of that you've seen that say vitamin D on them that we eat normally? Milk, vitamin D, like especially when you get whole milk, you'll see vitamin D. There's lots of things. There's lots of things that we fortify our foods with in order to make sure that everybody gets the vitamins that they need. That's not the case in Ghana. And Alea has rickets. And so when my friend Heidi was there, Marcy was there on that trip as well, when they first saw Alea, Heidi felt burdened by what was happening. And so she paid extra money for Alea to get extra vitamin D supplements so that her legs will never get better, but vitamin D could help them a little bit maybe. It would definitely help them from getting worse. So this is a picture of Heidi, my friend Heidi, and Alea this trip in May. They brought Alea to the clinic where we were so that Heidi could see her, and Heidi immediately noticed that her legs didn't look any better. And so she asked about that, and they said, well, Alea's mom was afraid of the vitamins. She didn't understand them. Even though they had explained them to her a couple times, she still didn't understand them, thought that they were going to hurt her in some way, and so she hadn't been given them to her. And because God is so good, I know this was a God thing, that Alea's mom is a single mom of 5 children. So you can think about what that would be like here in the United States to be a single mom of 5 children. Imagine what that would be like to be a single mom of 5 children in Ghana. She always works, but that day she happened to be at the school. And so when Heidi said, well, I'd like to talk to her mom, would she be available? They said, well, it turns out that she is here today. And so they brought her mom, Alea's mom, in to talk to Heidi. And they brought Deborah, the teacher, Alea's teacher, in with her as a translator. And Heidi sat down and explained to her about the vitamins. And Alea's mom explained to her situation of being a single mom of 5 kids. And the reason that she was there that day is because she had found out that her 2 older sons had pretended like they were coming to school, but they were actually out gambling instead. So they had brought Alea to school and then they left. And so she had been asked to come to the school because Alea didn't have any way home, which is very sad. And she was feeling very desperate that day. And she looked at Heidi and she said, will you take her? And that just broke me. I have never had to love my kids that much. I have never had to love my kids that much. To think that somebody else raising them would be better than me. Or to be so desperate to think that I can't give them what they need. And praise the Lord, God gave Heidi the words in that moment. And Heidi pulled up pictures of her own family on her phone, and she said, God has given Jesus, because you have to say Jesus there, because they talk about God a lot, but there's a lot of gods, under lowercase gods there, but you have to talk about Jesus. And she said, Jesus has already given me a family. And she said, and Jesus made you Alea's mommy. And so she was able to speak to her heart that day, and I pray that she was able to encourage her enough that she is strengthened and is able to continue on and do what she needs to do to be Alea's mom. And I do pray for them every day. I try to remember to pray for them every day, because their story is just one. It's just one of thousands of stories like that. But that's why the medical clinic is so important, because families like Alea's need medical care. Alea needs medical care. Simple things like vitamin D supplements. Simple things like, I'm trying to think, we already give them a food, multivitamins. The nurse will be giving them multivitamins. Watching their height and weight, making sure that they have their vision checked. Things that we take for granted. We go to the doctor and we have our wellness checks, and we take our kids to get their wellness checks. They don't have that there, and they don't trust it. Even if they have it available to them, they don't trust it. They don't understand enough about it to even depend on it. So a lot of times what things will happen, another story with Heidi is that she had sponsored a young lady in the vocational school, and this young lady got an infection. Well, what would any of us do if we get an infection? We go to the doctor, we get an antibiotic, we take it for 7 days, and we never think another thing of it, right? She got an infection, but she didn't go to the doctor. She didn't go to the hospital. This woman, I don't know exactly her age, but I believe she was in her 20s, maybe 30s, and she died. She got sepsis and she died, and that broke Heidi, and I think it's given her the fuel. When she walked into the medical clinic, into that corridor, she wept because she thought, if this had been available then, would she have had to die? But then she also realized that it's going to be available for the next person. And that gives her joy. So I told you earlier that the Micah 6:8 project is building a guest house. So this is going to be, kind of think of it like a bed and a breakfast that we would think of kind of thing. It's going to have 12 rooms with 12 bathrooms in each, or a bathroom in each room. While we were there, we got to see it. At the time, the walls were about as tall as I am. I could see over them, so not quite as tall as me. As of yesterday, Christy shared pictures with me that it's up to the ceiling height now, so they're ready to put the roof on. So that's exciting. And then, if you go to the next picture, and then I told you about Kunkunde Village. I told you we got to visit Kunkunde Village while we were there, and it really is. We don't know what poor is, people. When you think about Africa, maybe you think about, people who are, aren't dressed because they don't have clothing. Some of the people had clothing, but some of them didn't. Some of the children had clothing, some of them didn't. And when we got there, we went there to give out dresses that some generous folks had made here in the United States that we had taken with us. And the mothers even had their little boys lining up to get a dress, and the little boys seemed a little disgruntled about that, but the mom was just like, just take the dress. Like, I couldn't understand them because they weren't speaking English, but I know that's what they were saying. Just take the dress and go on. Because they wanted their child to have something to wear. Or they wanted them for their sister or something like that. What broke my heart with that was that there was a teenage girl. We'd only taken dresses for about 0 to age 12, and a teenage girl came up to me after we were done distributing the dresses, and she said, in such a very soft, sweet voice, she said, "Excuse me," she said, "would you have a dress for me?" "Yeah, at home I have about 20. But I didn't say that. And I said, "I don't think so. I think the only dresses that we brought were for the younger girls." And it broke my heart because I thought, yeah, I could have brought her a dress, and I just didn't even think about it. And she was so polite, and she said, "Well, thank you." And she just walked away, and she wasn't, she wasn't mad. She didn't lay on the ground and throw a fit. She didn't do anything like that. She just, "Okay, thank you." And she walked away. And so you better believe if I ever go back, I'm taking some dresses with me that fit teenage girls, because don't we all as teenage girls want a pretty dress to put on sometimes? Or a new dress, even if it's just made out of a feed sack, or out of most of the dresses that we took were made out of pillowcases with some straps, kind of like the ones I have on. This was not made out of a pillowcase, but I did get it in Africa, though. Let's see, what else? I want to make sure I didn't miss anything with that. So in Kunkunde Village, the reason that we built a relationship there is because of Jacob's Wells. Micah 6:8 went into the village, and they didn't have a well. So you can imagine they were just drinking water that fell from the sky, and they were able to collect it somehow. And they went in and they built a well, and so they created a relationship with these individuals because of that. And so now the next hope is to build a school there. So this picture here, the one with the young man in the top corner here, if you can see in the background, that's a chalkboard. So this is their school. This is their current school. And so believe it or not, they actually have 5 teachers that they've been able to get to come in to teach their students, but they teach them out of this little shelter house, is what I would call it. It's got one wall that the chalkboard sits on. The rest of the walls, it's all open. It's pretty meager, really, but that's where they teach out of. So Micah 6:8 is hoping to go in and build a school for them, so that they have a proper place to teach their children. Let's see, and then this last picture, I just find this fascinating, so I had to share it with you. So you see that they're chewing. You see that each of these people have something in their mouth. Would you believe it if I told you that was sugar? So it's actually a sugar cane root or twig. I'm not exactly sure how they get it, but it turns out that sugar cane has an element in it that actually kills the bacteria that creates cavities. So when you chew on this, they don't have access to Walgreens or Walmart for toothbrushes and toothpaste like we do, but they chew on this root. And so when we were there early in the morning, and so we saw a lot of people walking around with these sticks hanging out of their mouths. And so I asked the question, I'm like, what is that? Why do they all have that? They were actually brushing their teeth. And it was with sugar, believe it or not. It's just that when we refine it, we take all the good stuff out and leave the bad stuff. So pretty neat, I think, that God gives them that. And I think, though, that it may be bitter at that point, too, though. That kind of, I don't know. I'd like to think that it's not, but it probably is. And do what? No, I didn't know what it was when I was there. It wasn't until we got back on the bus that I said, what was that? And they said, well, that's sugar cane. I was like, oh, man, I wish I would have tried it. So anyway, the one thing I will say about the water, again, I had written this down earlier and I forgot to mention it. So just like in Kunkunde village, so 70% of all diseases in Ghana are caused by unsafe water and poor sanitation, which is why Jacob's Wells is so important to go in. And it's been the avenue in which they've been able to get in. So like they put a well in at the prison. And so now Micah 6:8 is invited back to the prison to minister, which I know the girls got to do, go to the prison to minister to them, which they wouldn't have had the opportunity to do if they hadn't built the well to get them in the door. So that is it, I think. I mean, there's a lot more. If you see all my pictures on Facebook, I mean, I'm a picture taker, so there's lots of pictures. There's places I didn't tell you about, but that's the main gist of it. Does anybody have any questions, comments? Nothing? Oh, yes. Wells. They have built 16 wells so far. Good question. You can donate just for a well. The cost of doing things over there is so cheap. It's so cheap compared to here. I know the exchange rate is like 5.7 of their, they call them CDs, it's of their dollars, is worth $1, one of our dollars. So yeah, whenever they exchanged my money, I had this huge wad of money, and it was really not that much, but it's because their money's worth so much less than our money is here. But anyway. Any other questions? I asked that. The question was, how do they know who owns what animals? I said that, and the answer, I asked him that a couple times, and the answer he gave was, they just know. They're not fighting about it, so apparently he's right that they just know, but I didn't see any like branding mark or anything like that to, like no tag in the ear. I didn't see anything like that like we do here to know whose is what. The chickens, any animal, I don't know how they knew, but he says they just know. So there was another question. Frank, you had a question? Oh, okay. So the question is, why did we do an inventory and what kinds of items are on there? So I'll start with the second question. The items on there are just all things that you would think of in like the nurse's office at school, in a doctor's office. So everything from Band-Aids and gauze pads, Neosporin. There's multivitamins in there. There's equipment. I'm trying to think. There's like nebulizer equipment. If somebody has some breathing issues, they're able to do some of that. And the reason I was making an inventory list is because we wanted to know what we started out with, so that when they go back each year, they can do an inventory of what's there at that time to see what is needed. Whether it be that the nurse does the inventory and then sends the list before going over, which is probably what will happen. And that way we can purchase things here to send over, just like we did there. There's some things that can be bought there. But a lot of stuff is not the same quality and money-wise and things like that. And so we want to be able to keep track of what is there and what is needed, and then be able to resupply it as it's being used. Yes? Yes, so the question was, did I have to get any special shots before I went? And the answer is yes. I had to get a yellow fever shot. I went down to Louisville to a immunization clinic down there that does international things, and they were wonderful. I would highly recommend them. And I will say, too, sidebar, if you ever have to do that, my friends recommended that I take an ice pack with me and put it on my arm. And because when I talked to my doctor about it, he said his yellow fever shot was the most painful shot he'd ever gotten. Like 10 minutes after he got it, he said his arm hurt worse than anything else he'd ever gotten. And I said, really? I used an ice pack for 10 minutes after my shot, and I didn't have any pain ever, the whole time, never. So he was actually fascinated by that, and I think was curious to see if that worked for him for other things. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Yes. Right, so that's true. So when you're there, the place does specialize, the immunization clinic where I got my shot does specialize on focusing on what shots are needed for the location you're going to, so that they don't give you shots for things you don't need because you're not going to other parts of the world. But they will warn you, like, oh, there's a possibility that you could get this, and you might need all these other shots. And before we went, Christy was like, you just need the yellow fever shot. Like, you don't need to get all these other things. So, I mean, sometimes there have been some people who've gone ahead and gotten these other things because they just feel better about it. But they go through all that with you, and it's not mandatory. The yellow fever shot is mandatory, though. You have to have it, and you have to have a card that shows you have it. And if you don't, they won't let you in the country. They'll let you fly to the country, but they won't actually come into the country without it. You had a question? That's a good question. So he asked about crime. The government isn't necessarily corrupt. So Ghana gained its independence in 1957. So they're a newer independent country, which is kind of neat, which is why Accra is so developed. And then as you go north and over all the other directions of Accra, the capital, you can see it kind of fall apart from there. And they're working out from there. But so the government isn't necessarily corrupt, although if you talk to some, they would have said that the elections that just took place were rigged, just like, whatever. But I'm not saying, anyway, whatever. But the police, they are corrupt in that they bribe people for money. But I asked about crime, and at least in Accra, we were told that it's interesting. The guy that was telling the story said, if you do something bad, you actually want the police to come. He said, because the public, if they see it happen, so let's say you stole somebody's wallet in the middle of the public somewhere, and everybody saw you do it, or somebody saw you do it, or if you hurt somebody in any way, if you are seen doing it, you will likely be killed by the people before the police show up. So he said, if you ever do anything like that, he said, you want the police to show up because they'll actually keep you from being killed. And so he said, really, the crime, at least in Accra, is for things like theft and stuff like that. My understanding is that it's not great because of that. But, I mean, we have children who are slaves, so, they're working on that too. And I will say this too, the way that they get around that, everybody's family in Ghana. And so if the authorities come to the boats and say, you are enslaving these children, they'll say, no, these are my children. These are my children they're working for our family business. And so that's how they get away with it. Because, I mean, there's really, people there don't have birth certificates and proof of identification and things like that. And so they'll just say that they're part of their family. And there's no way to prove that. And so it makes it harder for them to stop it from happening. Yes? the population that will use our clinic. So we're going to do it in phases. We're going to start out just taking care of the children in the school, and then we're going to then phase it to their family, which, like I said, everybody's there is family. So I mean, and I don't know what the population of Yeji is, but I know, Marcy, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but when they did the medical clinics, I mean, people would come from far, far away. So I don't even think we have any idea what that will even look like. And especially, we do want to try to charge a little something for it. Right now, with the medical clinics that they do, the 1 week every 2 years or whatever that they do, it's completely free. But we were advised to at least charge a little something. So the students will get free care as part of their academic package, but we were advised to charge a little something, maybe 1 CD, something, or even say you can have care for in exchange for a service, like come and do some weeding or something. We're not exactly sure what that's going to look like now, but and the reason for that is because of sustainability. We want this clinic to last even beyond our years there. And so not that $1 is going to sustain it, but it helps, and it helps them have buy-in into it. It's not just us giving them something, it's them having ownership in it as well. And so that's our hope, is to do that for them. Did that answer your question? Kind of, maybe? Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you for listening. Thank you for supporting me and supporting Micah 6:8. Please know that this is truly an organization that God, His hand is just all over it, and it is so neat to see Him at work in this. And but it's not possible. It's not possible without all of you, and without America. And that's one thing that I had a conversation. I'm going to say one more thing, then I'll be done. I had a conversation with a gentleman that is Ghanaian, and he watches American politics, and more than Ghanaian politics. And he was so knowledgeable about it. And I said, "Why do you follow American politics more than Ghanaian?" And he said, "It's because of Americans that we are Christians." He said, "Yeah, Christians in America learn how to be Christians because of Europeans," but he said, "Europeans don't come here, Americans do." He said, "And if America falters, then we falter." And he said, America is, how did he say it? He said, "We are ready for a revival. We are ready for a revival in this country," but he said, "We need a revival." He said, because there's a lot of things going on in this country, in the United States, that God is not going to allow to happen forever. And he said, and so I watch and I pay attention to what's happening there, because if America falters, we will falter. And so I think about that, and I think about the fact that, we are so blessed that we don't even have time what we have time to think about and what we have time to worry about are things that they would never think about and worry about, because they're not just worried about putting food on their table at night. They're just worried about having clean water to drink. So they don't have time to think about all the things that we squabble about here in the United States. And so when people say to me, "Oh, aren't we so blessed to be here?" We are blessed, but do we know it? Do we know it? It is heartbreaking to see how much we squabble about what we squabble about here. And I learned so much from them there that they just don't have time for that. And they're just hungry for Jesus. And that's really what we're all hungry for. And so that's what our focus needs to be on, is Him. So thank you all for letting me talk. And if you have any questions that you think of later, just let me know. God bless you guys.